Deja vu is a strange, mysterious experience in which the present moment feels like it came from the past. It's commonly associated with temporal lobe epilepsy, as well as other types of epilepsy, but most commonly that one. It's also called complex partial epilepsy. And in this brief video, I'm going to explain, 1, where it comes from, and 2, how you can use it in service of your spiritual life. Deja vu appears to be triggered when we are reminded of something that we don't quite remember. At least that's the most common explanation. As if it's an error in matching familiar circumstances or scenes onto the present scene. So if I was in a room 2 weeks ago with a certain shape and size, and then I entered another room with the same shape and size, but that was decorated differently and had different furniture and so forth. So it didn't remind me of the previous room consciously, but I subconsciously remembered it and tried to map the room I had been in before onto the present one. That might trigger deja vu. Now that's telling us what happens in our conscious and subconscious minds. The other question about deja vu is what's happening in our brains. Now, deja vu is most common in 2 age groups. One of them is between 7 and 10 years old, and the numbers there vary depending on who you're talking to. And the other is during teenage years. Now, this might be because teenagers are from outer space, or it might be because teenagers, as they undergo puberty, are also experiencing a dramatic rewiring of their brains. Imaginative play in youth is replaced by romantic and sexual desires and fantasies. The desire to be respected by one's parents and in one's family is replaced by the desire to be respected in a larger social group. When you're a very small child, having your feelings hurt by your brothers, sisters, or parents can be pretty severe. The same thing happening when you're 16 years old isn't anywhere near as serious. On the other hand, being rejected by your peers or your friends at school or set apart for ridicule can be devastating. So our brains rewire in terms of their capacity for imagination, the type of things it can imagine, the inner imaging that goes on with it, as well as a huge change in our social skills and our frontal lobes, which is where we'll find social skills and what's called executive functions. As the brain rewires itself during puberty, there are dramatic changes that happen, and these are accompanied by changes in the way we think. So deja vu happening in these 2 age groups without it having anything to do with any kind of epilepsy or neural disorder means that the brain is unstable during these periods. And the reason I hesitate to choose those words is because it's important not to assume that that means that the person is unstable. As far as the brain is concerned, there's an area we want to look at, and it's called the parahippocampal complex. We can see that these are on the underside of the brain, and the arrow indicates approximately where they are. It's right next to the hippocampus. And in order to understand what deja vu is in terms of brain function, we need to know what these areas of the brain do. Now, the hippocampus itself, which is a deep structure, deep down in the temporal lobes, a kind of long, elongated structure that runs along the side. The hippocampus itself is instrumental in taking our present experience and turning it into short-term memories, so that when I have an experience now and I remember it a moment from now, that's the hippocampus at work. The area around the hippocampus, called the parahippocampal complex, consisting of three parts: the parahippocampal gyrus, the entorhinal gyrus, and the and one other. Never mind the names. In fact, they're kind of technical names, and it's not like it's going to come up in conversation. You don't get onto a city bus and sit down next to an old lady and turn to her to make conversation and say, "Hey, how about that parahippocampal gyrus?" It just doesn't come up in conversation. You don't need to learn it. But what this area around the hippocampus does is it takes our short-term memory and turns it into long-term memory. And then when we go to remember it later on, these are the areas that retrieve the memory, or rather reassemble it in the moment that we want to remember something. These are kind of visible on the underside of the brain. And what I think is happening with déjà vu is that if the area that's concerned with long-term memory is overly connected to the area that's concerned with recording present experience and turning it into short-term memories, then the present will feel like the past. Now, that may have been just a little technical, so I'll try and run it by you again. When the areas that deal in long-term memory are overly connected to the areas that are scanning our present experience, the present can feel like it's a recurrence of a moment in the past. Now, in order to understand how it happens, this illusion of familiarity, as well as what it's doing in the brain, this hyperconnectivity of past and present, in order to see how we can use it spiritually, we have to forget that déjà vu has anything to do with the past at all. So, if you have déjà vu regularly, it's an indication one of the best directions for your spiritual life will be in spiritual practices that deal with the present moment. And above all, that refers to meditation, mindfulness meditation, actually. It's also called Zen meditation, as well as Vipassana meditation. And the names Zen and Vipassana, from Japanese and Sanskrit, respectively, got turned into mindfulness meditation because the original scripture in which the Lord Buddha taught the meditation technique is called the Anapanasati Sutra, and it can be translated into English as the Sutra on the Full Awareness of Breathing, or the Sutra on the Full Mindfulness of Breathing. So what you're doing is you are returning your attention again and again and again to the present moment. So you sit like a holy man or woman in a good meditation posture. You're paying attention to the sound of your breathing as it goes in and out of your nostrils, or you're paying attention to the movements of your abdomen as it rises and falls in time with your breath, or you simply feel the feeling of the slight wind of your breath going past your nostrils. Any body sensation that moves in time with your breathing can be a suitable object for Vipassana meditation. When something happens to take your attention away from it, you simply return it to the meditation object. So if you have an itch while you're meditating, you notice the itch and then you go back to being aware of your breathing. If your mind goes off on a tangent, you become aware that your mind has gone off on a tangent and return it to the meditation object. Return it to your breathing. No matter what happens, you go back to the present moment. And déjà vu creates a very interesting opportunity for putting meditation skills into practice, because déjà vu is an alteration in the perception of the present moment. I know it's very engaging when you have déjà vu to try and remember the moment in the past that it came from, or wonder what it is or what it means. Is this a fragment of a past life that I'm being reminded of? Was it something that happened in a dream that echoes the events of the present moment, the here and now? So you try and remember your dreams, you try and remember notions about past lives. You try to figure it out. And usually that won't work. So if you are at all interested in developing your spirituality, and you're subject to frequent episodes of deja vu, when it happens, don't think of the past. Don't try to figure it out. Don't try to interpret it. Don't try to see what it means. Instead, in that moment, put your full attention into the present. And when you do that, your attention to the present moment is going to have a strange and powerful momentum added to it by the strong urge to look into your past. So the present moment, the nowness, is imbued with a strong sense of pastness. If you try to remember the moment in the past that the present moment evokes, it's as though you're grabbing deja vu by the wrong end. You're grabbing it by the past. And what you want to take it by is the present moment. So if you know anything at all about meditation and a moment of deja vu appears, simply stop what you're doing, close your eyes, and pay attention to your breathing. Don't search the past. Rather, engage the present. And doing this can create an interesting and powerful exercise. I don't know if many of you who are interested in the spiritual aspects of deja vu pay a lot of attention to baseball. But there's an exercise that the batter does just before he steps up to the plate, or should I say she. Hopefully it will soon be she as much as he. But the batter will pick up a baseball bat made of lead, and they'll swing it around slowly, exercising all of the muscles in their arms and their upper back and their chest that are involved in actually hitting the ball. And then when they pick up the ordinary wooden bat and hold it, by comparison it feels like it weighs like a toothpick. It feels like it weighs nothing. So preparing to hit the ball with the light wood bat involves pretending to hit the ball with a heavy bat made of lead. So when you engage the present moment in a moment of deja vu, it's as though you are engaging the present moment with that lead bat, so that later on when you are meditating in ordinary circumstances, you'll find that there is a slight you have a slight edge that you didn't have before. So that's how you use deja vu for spirituality. The urge is to search the past or search your memories to find the right moment in the past. The challenge is to be as present as possible. What does pastness happening in the present moment feel like? Engage that sensation, which I cannot describe for you in words. I can't even allude to it. Engage that sensation as strongly as you can. Try and have as crystal clear a perception of what pastness, or the urge to remember, feels like. Don't engage it by trying to remember. Engage it by feeling like remembering, and let that be enough. The more times that you do it, the more little itty-bitty, eensy-weensy, teeny-tiny synapses that ordinarily inhibit your perception of the present moment will drop away. It will take a long time. To truly transform your personality through meditation takes years, decades. Adding this technique, deja vuing to the present instead of to the past, will help it along. It depends on who you are, how long it will take to actually manifest as a clear and palpable enhancement in your meditation practice. But at least it will give you the impression that your mind is yours to work with and play with, and you are not subject to the happenstances and the random events that happen in your brain. If you're working on being in the present and something happens to pull your mind out of it, go back to it, whether it happens in meditation or during a moment of deja vu. There's an opposite experience to deja vu. It's called jamais vu. And deja vu means ever seen in French. Jamais vu means never seen. So instead of a moment or a circumstance being more familiar than it should be, as in déjà vu, it becomes completely unfamiliar. And in a moment of jamais vu, you can look in a mirror, and the face that you're seeing looking back at you can almost seem like the face of a stranger. It's a very peculiar sensation. And when it happens, everything seems wrong, dreamlike, alien, foreign, or not of this earth, or rather, not of your experience of this earth. It isn't anywhere near as common as déjà vu, but if it happens to you and you can engage the present moment in the moment where the past is completely unavailable to you and nothing seems familiar, then once again you can add some momentum to your meditation practice, as well as practicing the technique, the method, the instinct whereby these strange perceptions of yourself in time can be brought back to the present moment. If you can pull yourself back to the present moment when you have déjà vu or jamais vu, pulling yourself back to the present moment when the tip of your nose itches during meditation will be a piece of cake. Déjà vu is only one of a whole class of experiences, and they're called complex partial epileptic signs in the technical language of epileptology and neuroscience. They're also called temporal lobe signs, and there doesn't seem to be any common name for it in English vernacular. So we're going to have to call them temporal lobe signs. Another way of expressing it is to say that they are subtle and gentle altered states of consciousness. When you are dreaming, you're in an altered state. If you take an hallucinogenic drug, you're in an altered state. If you hit your head and see stars, have a mild concussion, you're dizzy for a moment, that's another altered state. These are very quiet altered states. Déjà vu is the best known of them. Another one is the feeling that there's someone or something behind you, but when you turn to look, there's no one there. It's called the sensed presence experience. Another of these temporal lobe signs is the feeling that your bed is moving, rising, falling, rocking, perhaps even spinning when you're lying in bed waiting to fall asleep and you know that you're not moving. Something very similar can happen if you're watching an advertisement for an amusement park and they show you a film clip where the camera is mounted right on the front of a roller coaster, and as you watch the camera move and the TV screen move, you can begin to have a sense of movement in your body. These are called vestibular sensations. Another one is tingly sensations that can happen in all sorts of circumstances in response to some very evocative emotional event. A cute little kitty, musical crescendos. You're watching an opera, if you're into opera, the orchestra reaches its crescendo, the soprano hits the high note, your hands close over your heart, you lean back and you say, ah, and your body is filled with chills. Interestingly, if music makes you want to dance, it won't give you chills. The only way to get chills out of listening to music is to focus all of your attention on it. Put on the headphones, close your eyes, and give it your complete attention. And that's the time when musical chills can run through your body. I'd like to take a moment to show you my new book. It's called Déjà Vu and Other Spiritual Gifts. And it explains what kind of spiritual opportunities each of these temporal lobe signs has to offer you. So just as I've explained that déjà vu is an invitation to go deeper into your experience of the present and engage things like mindfulness meditation, there is also an explanation of how you make use of the sense presence experience, that strange vestibular experience where the bed feels like it's moving when you're falling asleep. Another one that belongs in that category is the experience of having images flash through your mind as you drift off to sleep while you're in that twilight state. And in addition to this, there is some discussion of how to engage spiritual healing techniques. And when I say spiritual healing, I mean healing by laying on hands. I had a spiritual teacher some years ago. He was called Carmu, and he taught me the basic technique of healing by laying on hands, which I believe to be one of the very earliest spiritual healing techniques available to our early ancestors. In the very beginning of our species, when we didn't know how to make medicines from the plants and the herbs that surrounded us in nature, we had to rely on other techniques, and I think the very first one of them was what is now known as healing by laying on hands. And in spite of the ridicule that it draws from some scientists, there actually is some evidence that spiritual healers of this type, the ones that were studied were Qi healers, doing a technique called Qi Kung healing, have been able to manifest strong magnetic fields from their hands. Not much research has been done on this, but what has been done is very promising. The book is available on Amazon.com, and my name is Todd Murphy, so just go to Amazon.com, put in Murphy and Déjà Vu, and it will come up for you quite quickly. There is one other theme that I think belongs in this video, and that is the notion that apparently came from the film The Matrix. And according to this idea, when you're having déjà vu, you're actually having an alteration in the time-space continuum. And it isn't your mind or your brain that's been changed or working differently to produce the experience. It's time itself has changed for you. And naturally, this is nonsense. It doesn't work to explain déjà vu for people who have it very often through epilepsy, and it hasn't been able to manifest a new way of interstellar space travel by using black holes.
Wir wissen nicht, wie den Männern im Raumschiff gegangen ist.
Dem Vertretern der Weltpresse einige Aufklärungen über den Start geben.
Tja, der Start wird nach menschlichem Ermessen das schwierigste am ganzen Flug zum Mond werden. Denn die Geschwindigkeit von fast 12.000 Metern in der Sekunde oder fast 43.000 Kilometern in der Stunde muss innerhalb von 8 Minuten erreicht werden. Der dabei auftretende Beschleunigungsdruck grenzt aber schon an das Äußerste, was Menschen überhaupt zu ertragen vermögen. Das ist eigentlich alles. Hat einer daher noch eine Anfrage? Ich muss mich sehr kurz fassen. Das Schiff startet in 5 Minuten. Dann würde das Schiff seine Geschwindigkeit so lange steigern, bis alle seine Brennstoffvorräte erschöpft sind.
Wird Weltraumschiff 1 in ständiger Funkverbindung mit...
Es ist ja schließlich ganz gleichgültig, ob ich oder ob in kurzer Zeit ein anderer dieses Wagnis.
Warum erfolgt denn der Start träglicheren Beschleunigung?
Weil dann die Abschusszeit über 8 Minuten ausgedehnt. Und der Treibstoffverbrauch dadurch so gewaltig steigen würde, dass ein 3-mal so großes Schiff nicht ausreichte, um das notwendige Neotan X zu fassen.
Aber was geschieht, wenn die gesamte Besatzung unter dem furchtbaren Andruck des Startes...
Dann würde das Schiff seine Geschwindigkeit so lange steigern, bis alle seine Brennstoffvorräte erschöpft sind.
Und wie kämen Sie dann wieder zur Erde zurück?
Nicht mehr.
Warum werden dann aber die Raketen nicht durch Automaten bedient, die nach Erreichung der erforderlichen Geschwindigkeit die Brennstoffzufuhr drosseln?
Weil gerade bei diesem ersten Start ins Weltall auch Zwischenfälle eintreten können, die kein Mensch voraussehen kann. Und dafür gibt es leider noch keine Automaten.
Verzeihung, Herr Kommodore, ich sehe, dass die Richtung der Startbahn...
Sehr richtig. Wenn aber das Weltraumschiff in seiner Flugbahn etwa gelegt haben wird, so wird auch der Mond an diesem Punkt...
Wie wenn ein Jäger einem laufenden Hasen vorzielt.
Ja, man kann es auch so nennen.
I would be doing a disservice to people who've come to this video because they want help with déjà vu. Some people have it so often that it disturbs their lives. Some people have it accompanied by fear and anxiety. Those people want help for their situation. Now, I'm not going to give out any medical advice in the course of this video, but I would tell you that there is more than one way of thinking about déjà vu. One of the most interesting is to be found in the fact that it happens frequently with epilepsy, and that in addition to Western medical practice, there is also traditional Chinese medicine and the Ayurvedic medical traditions of India. And both of these traditions have had long experience working with people who have both epilepsy, déjà vu, as well as epileptic déjà vu. Now, the language in which this is expressed is extremely cumbersome and difficult to understand without a solid background in traditional Chinese medicine.
可以说是金玉良缘，你说怎么样？
老太太既然这样疼他，想替他成家，做儿子的还能不答应吗？不过，薛家的姨妈是不是肯这样做？同时，宝玉还病着，做起来，那么亲友方面怎么样招呼呢？
亲友方面一概不用招呼他们。
是，
我们就这么办。你去做你的事吧。
是。
If someone told me that they were having epileptic déjà vu very often, they'd gone to see their doctor, the doctor had given them medicine that was giving them too much trouble or simply didn't work, the first thing I would tell them would be to go and see a traditional Chinese herbalist and see what they have to offer. They have their own way of thinking about it, their own way of treating it, and it's in use across China with its over 1 billion people. If déjà vu is being a problem for you and you don't like the Western medical approach, take a look at the traditional ones, the ones that predate the invention of brain imaging techniques, anti-epileptic medications, and the diagnostic markers and techniques. But again, if that doesn't work out, look to the great traditions of Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine. I can't guarantee it will work for you, but they do have things to offer. And if you're dissatisfied with Western medical treatment, it's far better to seek an alternative than it is to go without treatment at all. Again, that's for people whose déjà vu is related to epilepsy. For most people, déjà vu is not epileptic, it's not a pathology, it's just something that happens to many, but not all, normal minds and normal brains. If you have déjà vu, it does not mean you have epilepsy. We've looked at 4 aspects of déjà vu. What happens in our mind when we have it? As we attempt to match something familiar from a past context, including the shape of a room, onto the present moment, but fail. So we end up feeling like we're reliving a moment from the past, but we're not. What happens in our brains when we have déjà vu? So that the areas of the brain that are involved in creating short-term memory out of present moment experience have too much connection to the areas that retrieve and recreate long-term memories. We've looked at how we can use it spiritually. Déjà vu is an indicator that you have a knack or an aptitude for spiritual practices that focus on the present moment. When déjà vu happens, go present. Think of it as a mini opportunity, a small launch window that can take you into meditation differently than usual. And we've also looked at alternative ways of responding to it. If it's too much for you, if it's a problem, you can see a Western doctor. But if you don't like the treatment they offer you, you don't have to go without treatment altogether. You can consult a traditional Chinese doctor, an Ayurvedic doctor, an herbal doctor from India, and they can often give you medications and herbal preparations that will not have the sometimes unwanted side effects that anticonvulsant and anti-epileptic medications can. Go to Amazon.com and look for Déjà Vu and Other Spiritual Gifts by Todd Murphy, and you'll find a full book on all of this. Thank you for watching, and I hope you will look at some of my other videos on this YouTube channel and see if there's anything else you like. My name is Todd Murphy. I am a member of Laurentian University Behavioral Neurosciences program. I'm a member of that program, not enrolled at the university. And I've been studying the brain's role in religious and mystic experiences for approximately 20 years. So you can also find my other book, which is called Sacred Pathways, The Brain's Role in Religious and Mystic Experiences. has a foreword by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I guess he liked it, and thank you for joining me.
The preceding program has come to you by special video recording.